I believe that it's possible to self-publish to the same quality and standard as traditional publishing. Welcome to the 1100 Project with me, Stuart White, author and founder of Write Mentor. I want to see if it's possible for me to self-publish, sell 1,000 copies of my book, and get 100 reviews within 12 months. You'll be able to follow my progress via this podcast. My debut middle grade novel, Ghosts of Mars, is due for publication on the 16th of January 2023. The publishing landscape is changing, and I'm ready to take a different path. Hello and welcome to the 1100 Project with me, Stuart White. This podcast, as you know, is going to be charting the progress of me self-publishing my novel and releasing it in January 2023. I am honoured today to be joined by Jennifer Jamieson, who did the cover illustration for my book. And I know that many of you have probably seen the cover reveal on Twitter and Instagram recently for that. So you'll hopefully know the one I'm talking about. What I'll do as well is, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll edit in a little image of the cover onto the screen just now, so you can have a look at that as well. I'll put a link to it in the notes below the podcast as well if you're just listening, so you get a chance to have a wee look at that. So yes, I'm with Jennifer Jamieson today. Do you prefer Jennifer or Jen?
Oh, yeah. Jen's fine for the for this, yeah. Jennifer, Jennifer's formal, and then just Jen.
Yeah. Well, I made the mistake actually when I was uploading the cover and stuff to the book of just putting Jen Jamieson at first, because when we've been dialoguing, it's always just been Jen. And then I was like, oh, actually, and then I had to look at how you've been listed in other things, and it's all Jennifer. And that, so I had to go
I'm trying to change it. I'm trying to change it to Jennifer, just because Jamieson's so long. I was like, well, Jennifer is long. I just thought it looked good because otherwise Jen is really short, and I don't know, and it's probably causing a lot of trouble being Jennifer, because then it's too long for like a Twitter handle. So I've already just quite completely shot myself in the foot. So.
Yeah, it's quite nice, isn't it, to have that aesthetic balance, isn't it, between the first and second name, I think, when they're similar length.
Exactly, yeah. And it's my married name, and I haven't changed anything like legally, but I just thought like the double J just sounded quite cool. So I was like, well, I'll just do that. So I'm literally that just for books and everything else, and so that's causing even more confusion.
It's nice to make things hard. I don't know, it's brilliant. It's literally like a superhero alter ego name, isn't it? Jennifer Jamieson.
Yeah.
You know, they all tend to be double first lettered.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. So it's quite a cool name to have. So Jen, how did you get into illustration initially then? What drove you to choose that as a career and as something you wanted to pursue?
Well, I actually started doing children's books really recently. It's kind of been a changing career since the pandemic. Before that, when I first studied, I did biology. So I did a biology degree, which which I loved, but I didn't. Did some like. Like a year working in industry in a lab, and I just when my supervisor said, I think we're going to have to redo all these experiments with someone else next year, I thought, okay, maybe like a year life working in the lab isn't for me. I don't think I'm cut out for this. But and so I then went and did like a college course in doing graphic design, because that's what I always really wanted to do, like something creative. And I had looked into how you could use both of these things that I loved, because I love biology and I loved being creative and like designing and stuff. And so I got a job. I studied in Manchester and got a job at an agency that did that created design stuff for like pharmaceutical companies. And I was like, this is brilliant, because this is kind of joining the two together. But then I realized it was actually kind of the worst bit of, like, it was the pharmaceutical companies and then designing like graphs and stuff. It was kind of the worst bit of both of these jobs. So I didn't stay there. I stayed for very long, but it was a really lovely agency that I worked at with great people, and I learned loads. And so I did a lot of web design and designing apps and things for startups, and like traveled around a little bit. And then when I had my kids, I had my daughter's like 6.5, and at that point I started I'm still doing a lot of design, but doing design for kids. Like I've got a few, and like novelty stuff. I've got like I got a job at a packaging place designing like novelty like night lights and things like that. And I realized like, okay, I think this is much more my area, like doing stuff for kids and doing things that like that just like that are a little bit more fun with like, you know, this like bright colors and that sort of stuff, rather than the slick cool websites that I had been doing that I just hadn't really felt like I'd found my thing. And then I got some really great clients designing socks. Oh, I should have got some socks. Designing candles and that kind of stuff. So really cute, I think I got some of the candles. Have I? Oh, I think they're in that box, but never mind.
Yeah, don't worry.
So I was just designing like nice things for gifts and packaging for kids stuff. And then when the pandemic hit, I'd actually right at the sort of January 2020, I'd started thinking, I'd signed up to an illustration course because I thought I really do want to like learn how to do proper illustration. The sort of illustration that I was doing was stuff that like no one would come to me be like, oh, I love your style, I want you to do this. Like they would just be like, oh, you're a designer that does this sort of thing. Okay, this is my mood board, I want you to do what we want. So it was kind of like the other way around. And I decided, I was like, for some reason I was like, this year is going to be the year that I figure out exactly what it is that I want to do, and people will come to me for that. And so I signed up to an editorial art course, and like, you know, I set up my Instagram, the Jen Jamieson Instagram, and I was like, I have no idea what it's going to be. And then in March, the pandemic hit, as we all remember, and all my work, all my clients, my graphic design clients, all sort of disappeared because no one, you know, shops were closed, factories in China were closed. There was no one. Actually, I had one client that did kids activity books. They were doing really well because everyone's kids were at home. They're like, give us activity books. So that was, but most of my work completely disappeared. And we'd gone up to, before like they locked everything down, we'd gone up to my parents because they were like, come up now, or we won't be, or don't come up at all. We don't want to see you till it's all over. And so we'd gone up, and both my husband's freelance as well, and obviously the kids' schools all closed, and so we went up to stay with my mum and dad. And at that point I decided that I want to try and do, if with some a little bit of extra free time that I had when I wasn't with the kids, I'll try and do some illustration stuff, and also just to keep me like feel like I was kind of still doing something, because it's, you know, I feel like, especially if you work for yourself, you kind of need to feel like you're doing something, don't you? I feel like that quite a lot, even when everything was shut down. And so that coincided with the 100-day project, which happened that year in April. And I decided, and the 100-day project is when you can do whatever you want for 100 days, do it every day, and anyone can get involved. You could write, like, you know, a short poem if you want, you could take a photo, you can sew something, like absolutely whatever you want, and you just want to see the consistency of doing it every day. And I decided I was going to draw people because I wanted to get better at drawing people, because I had never really ever drawn people at all. So I just first of all, I reached out to my friends, and they sent me pictures of what they were doing in their lockdown, and that became my project, just like different people's sort of lockdown lives, and so I was just drawing people every day, and that kind of made me realize that that's what I wanted to do. So and then at that point, that project was sort of got me kind of, you know, like sort of given me a good body of work, enough for an illustration agency to notice me and get in touch, which kind of like made the decision like for me that like children's illustration was what I should do. And that's kind of
so did it was Plum Agency who did they reach out to you? Was it?
Yeah, it was in June. So I'd been doing the project. It started in April. I think it was day 72, which was because it was my birthday. I have the picture. I'll get the picture.
Yeah, go for it. Oh, I'm excited to see this. And if you're watching this on YouTube as well, we see in the background, I think those are some of Jen's illustrations on the wall behind her as well. So I was just saying, for those who are watching it on YouTube, they'll have seen maybe some of your illustrations behind you as well.
Yeah, some of those are mine. Yeah, I can point some things out. This one is the one that I posted on that day because it was my birthday, and so it was of me and my daughter. I thought I'd do one of us, because obviously most of the days I was finding other people that were involved. But yeah, on that day, because it was my birthday, so I would do a picture of me and my daughter, and that was the day that my agent, who then became my agent, got in touch with me and just asked me to set up a call and see if I wanted representation. So it was
amazing.
really good birthday.
Yeah, I know, and it's a beautiful drawing as well. It was one of the things actually when I initially put the shout out for looking for an illustrator, and you said that you'd be interested, and I had a look at all your work and so on. That's the thing that really drew me to all of your portfolio, was the fact that they're all person related. A lot of illustrators, the focus very much on the background, the scenery and so on, but it was your people and the way you drew them that really drew me to your work.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
So
that's kind of.
I think all that practice you got in that project there really paid off.
Yeah, that project really helped me sort of do practice the work, and made me realize that not just that it was good, but I actually really enjoy doing it. And the fact that I'm still doing that and finding ways to still to draw people interacting, it's what I really enjoy doing. So it turned out that it was a good idea to do that project. It's great.
Oh, fantastic. And it's really nice to hear where people have come from, and get an appreciation of that, because I guess a lot of people maybe just assume, you've been drawing all your life, that was always the career that you were destined for, and so on. So it's nice to hear all the little bits and pieces. And interestingly enough, I also did a biology degree.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. That's so when you were saying that, I was like, oh, similarities there, because
yeah.
And but I ended up sticking with it. I'm a biology teacher now. So
there you go. I just don't think I could be a teacher. I wasn't cut out for teaching. But I think biology is I've always thought that from all the sciences, biology there's something about it that I think it's creative, and it's about life, and it's about problem solving, and it's so, like, for me as an illustrator, I always, like, when I was studying for my exams, everything was drawing. I was just drawing like life cycles, drawing like things, like I just felt it was very visual for me, and the way that it's just about sort of everything to do with life. I think it is something that a lot of people probably like biology as well as other things, because it's so all encapsulating, isn't it? But I was at school, I was always like really arty at school. And doing the biology it feels like a little bit of a detour, really, just because, like, I don't know, I mean, I guess, like, that it's not always been as, like, easy to imagine that you can have a job doing something like this, is it? Like, now I'm like, wow, I can't believe how many jobs there are that, if for people that enjoy drawing or creating or idea generation and, like, storytelling, there's so many great jobs, but you just definitely didn't realize that then. But I hope that, I'd like to hope that these days it's a lot more clear to kids at school that they can.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I think I'll try not to get too sidetracked by this, but I do think it's one of the failings of schools is to encourage people to go down the arts route, because it's so focused on jobs that have stability or earn you lots of money and so on. I know certainly that the school I work at and the previous ones I've worked at, that is a big driving force in what kids choose to do at school, and then subsequently what they choose to do at university. It's all driven by job security and salaries and so on, which to some extent is understandable, because parents want their kids to have a secure life and have enough money and so on. But then what we lose from that is people who are talented artistically, who maybe go down a different path. And it's only, as you say, later on that sometimes we realise that we should maybe have gone down a slightly different route.
Yeah, because it's hard to. I do think, like, oh, what would have happened if I'd just gone and tried to do illustration and children's books straight away. But then you also think, well, everything that I've done in all that time is, you bring all of that to whatever it is you do now, isn't it? So nothing's like time wasted. It's all, it's just all like where you're supposed to be, I suppose.
Yeah, and I guess the life experience gives you a bit of perspective in a lot of things that you might not have gotten if you'd gone straight down the artistic route. Yeah, that's interesting. Anyway, that's a totally new topic and slightly diverging from what we're here to chat about. So let's talk a little bit about how we came to work together then, and then obviously what working together looked like. Now, for people who are in a similar position to me, I don't have an agent or a publisher or anything who are arranging things for me. So I'm having to do everything I'm doing on my own. So for me, it was just a case of doing a shout out in social media. And I was really lucky that a number of great people responded, but obviously specifically you did. And I was able to, then you linked to your portfolio. I was able to go and look at it and so on. And some of the mock covers that you did, they really, really appealed to me because they looked a lot like how I imagined my cover would look like in terms of like style and color and so on. And that's obviously really important. So I guess for someone, and we'll flip the tables here. So I guess for someone who's an illustrator, maybe freelance or with an agency looking for more work, what could they be doing on their website or their portfolio to, I guess, encourage people to want to hire them for book covers?
I guess just finding, because I've got an agent, and I hope that they're obviously always out there getting my work in front of people, but there's so many like other places that you can find work. Like I think you posted, it was in a Facebook group. Was it the Scooby Facebook group?
Yeah, that's right,
so
yeah.
It's like, I think it's just so important to be out there yourself. Because a lot of my ongoing work I've got for myself thanks to having a presence on Instagram and Twitter, and just sort of staying relevant and keeping everything up to date. And especially as the fact that I found my agent through Instagram, I'm such a massive advocate. But even though obviously it's just like, it's a full-time job and it can like really like suck the life out of you having to spend time on social media, and particularly when you're starting and you're just putting stuff out there and you're shouting into the void. But it only takes one person to see something, and for them to like sort of change your life, really. So it's really worth it to just keep going and keep turning up. And there's like Twitter and Instagram, I find, like I'm sure there's probably like stuff happening on TikTok as well, which maybe one day. But there's so many other opportunities, like people that are doing things outside of books, like sort of animation studios that might be having a look at your work, or just people that are looking for like their like sort of digital assets for their website, and they might want some illustrations, and like startups and people like that that might not sort of think, oh, their first protocol might be to go check an agency. Their first thought might be like, oh well, I'll go check some hashtags on Instagram and Twitter. And so there's so much more ways of getting work and getting in front of people, and even just like making those connections with someone that might not get you work, but they might know someone that they might share your work, or like mention you to someone who could get you work. So it's all just about sort of keeping a profile enough for people to be able to find you. I think it seems really important these days.
Yeah, and your Instagram feed is amazing. There's I think I don't know how often you draw, if you do it every single day or not, but you certainly post very regularly, and you put up different sketches with different. I think there's like different hashtags and stuff over there, isn't there, where you take part in different challenges and so on.
Yeah, there's loads of the challenges are really. I'm writing about that in my newsletter at the moment, because I think because of doing that, the 100-day project challenge, I think doing challenges are so important. We've got the Friday Doodle Club, which is one that I set up with 3 illustrator friends, and we post a new prompt every week, and we have like the hashtag Friday Doodle Club, and we encourage people to. We set that up based on what we learned from doing a lot of like illustration courses, to try and encourage people to have really interesting characters that are feeling emotions and doing things. And so for our prompt, we have an adjective, a verb, and a noun to encourage people to just to sort of come up with something really interesting, just to keep portfolios really fresh, because that's the sort of thing that people like art directors and people that might want to hire you, that's the kind of thing that they look for. And and also like joining in with things like Folktale Week and doing the Draw This in Your Style challenges, like you're using those hashtags that lots of people will be looking at and lots of people will be following, and it just will help bring more people to be able to see your work.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Obviously, if you're an illustrator and you're listening to this, lots of really good tips there and ideas for how to enhance your portfolio and sort of push yourself, I guess, challenge yourself to do new things. Because I know even as writers, it's the same thing. We the more we sort of challenge ourselves and try and do new things and so on, the better and more rounded you become as a writer
Yeah.
overall. And I'm sure it's the same as an illustrator.
Yeah, and it's nice. It's like when you do a challenge for yourself, when you like host a challenge, it's like it's like a gift that you're giving the community, and you're inviting them to, like, if with the Draw It in Your Style challenge, you kind of allowing people to sort of dissect your work and see what techniques you use. And so it's like, it's a nice idea that as a community we all share like our things that we've learned and things that help us.
Yeah.
Which is the same as with the writing community with the things that you do.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's really cool to hear all this stuff. So let's talk a little bit more specifically about. And I know you've done a blog post about this actually, and I think you put it in your newsletter too. Is that right?
Yeah.
About how the actual stages that we went through as we worked together on the project. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but before we got started, actually, I should just say, if you're working with someone who is working on their own, so without an agency, obviously you would deal with them directly with all the contract stuff and the payment stuff, and I would think they would probably have like their own sort of standard contract that they would use as a freelancer. But when you're working with an agency, luckily they deal with all that side of things for you.
Yeah, like I have, as because I was freelance designer before finding my agent, so I've sort of done both ways. And before I got my agent, I worked on a couple of worked with a couple of self-published authors, so I was doing that on my own. And which is like, I mean, it was like great experiences and nothing went wrong, but there was obviously the contract side of things, which it's a bit scary, isn't it? And it is nice being able to just sort of having an agent, I can just say like, yeah, talk to them about it. But it can also, when you're working with self-published, I've had a few self-published authors that it's been a little bit of a barrier, like they might not want to go through an agent. And I try to like sort of reassure people that, like as it was with you, that the agent just sorts out like the boring stuff, and then we work directly together, and the agent doesn't get involved at that point. So like from the creative side of things, we work in collaboration very closely. So
Yeah.
once all that boring stuff's out the way, it's just
Yeah, it's the fun stuff. Yeah, and that's quite good actually, isn't it, to remove that element of it, because it meant when you and I were speaking, it was purely about the work, about the creativity, rather than
yeah.
having to worry about the other stuff. And then obviously I spoke with your agent independent of that about all the other things.
Mm,
And I
yeah.
think
So
I think that's a nice relationship to have.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Glad out with the money stuff getting in the
Yeah, yeah.
way.
I know, and it's one of those things actually, and it's something I talk to people about a lot. But we shouldn't be ashamed to talk about money, in this industry, because a lot of people are. They don't like talking about the fact that they get rewarded for their talent and so on. And I think that's
Yeah.
ridiculous. I think that if you want to earn money for your work and you think it's worth that, then that's fine. And I don't
Hmm.
think there should be any judgment with that. And but
Yeah.
unfortunately, we have this sort of society which says, "Oh, artists should be paid more," and then when they then get the bill in from the artist, they're like, "Oh no, that's ridiculous! I can't pay that."
Yeah, I think it's like fair enough. Like I understand that everyone's on a budget, and like it's the same with anything. Whenever you're hiring someone, like they tell you what they're worth, and you can choose to not pay it, but you shouldn't try and tell them that actually no, you're worth this, which is a lot lower than what they think. So it's like, yeah, I think having that respect for like the people actually want to kind of survive
Yeah,
of the job that they do all day is quite fair enough.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, let's talk about the creative side then, which is the fun part. So I believe we started off with me sending you, I think it was a really terrible Canva mock-up of, and I think I posted this on Twitter actually. The
Yeah.
the thing that I sent you, and then what you finished with. So from there, as an illustrator, where do you go with that? I think you asked me some follow-up questions as well, didn't you? Just to get more of a feel for it, but I didn't want to be too intrusive to your sort of creative process.
Yeah, I think it was I think the first having that visual that you created for me was really helpful, because it just sort of painted the picture, and what the elements that we wanted to be included in it. And so that was really helpful. And then just getting to know more about the world that the story was set in, and the character, particularly the main character Eva, and just getting to know her as a person, and that sort of helped sort of create the whole, like, the sort of basic vision for what the cover was going to be, and then the spots for the characters as well.
Yeah, so we'll quickly talk about the spots, actually, just before we go on to talk about the cover more. Now, that's obviously something that I can't remember. I don't think I called it that. I think it was you guys that called it that. I think I just said I wanted the characters to be, individual drawings, because I didn't know enough about illustration to realise it was like it had its own name. But you obviously asked me for a lot of, and it was interesting because you asked me for physical details for the characters, but you also asked me a bit about their personality. So do you want to talk a little bit about why knowing more about their personality helps with the illustration?
So for me, for this project in particular, because it's not an illustrated book, so it was like the visual for the characters was just this one spot illustration that we were creating. The spot is when it's just a character or just a thing without like a lot of background. If it has a bit of background around it, then it's a vignette, or obviously it can be a full spread. But for us, it was just we were just drawing the characters. For me, I wanted to just show as much of the character as you could, and obviously you could have someone just standing there, and we'd be able to tell that, oh, they're wearing a spacesuit, they're tall, they've got this color hair, and they've got that. But then as soon as they start, even just a little change in their facial expression, you're like, oh, they're sneaky, or are they good, are they going to be bad, what are they going to do? And then you start really, the visual personality can like come through, so with the visuals, and you can suddenly learn so much more about this character, even just just like a small change to their pose, or like, they could be hunched over, or they can be standing proud, and all these things just tell us so much. Like, that's what we do as people from when we're tiny babies, isn't it? We just we read people and we try and figure out who these people are. And so for you to get as much as the client, for you to get as much as you can out of me, I wanted to, these little information, and then any little props that they can have that gives clues to what they're going to do and stuff. I think that's all like really important as part of my job. It's important to have that information so I can give it back to the audience through the characters.
Yeah, and from my point of view, I was honestly, I was blown away when with how accurately depicted like the stances of the characters and so on. So just on those still images, you managed to encapsulate a lot about their personality. And so I guess that's the reason why it's so important that we share that with the illustrator.
Yeah, exactly. And also as the illustrator, it's important to know that not everyone works the same way. Like, the people might not see it in their head, and they might not be as visual. So for you to, even if what you end up showing them is wrong, show them something, show them doing something, because then the client can be like, oh, that's not how they would stand. Like, then they suddenly start thinking about it too, and then that's when this dialogue really helps to bring to the character to then start to be like, well, this is how they would stand. And especially because a lot of characters might be based on like a person or a type of person, and then you sort of start to think, oh yeah, well they would sort of like be a bit shy and carrying over, in that conversation and that collaboration will mean that all those like traits that about this character that you've written, and the way that you've written them, will then start to show visually through this through the illustration that we're creating. And that's why I think it's so nice to be like so collaborative with these things.
Yeah, and you really were. I can't remember how many emails. Actually, I've got the email thread here. But it was a lot of emails, wasn't it?
That were,
yeah. I know it was good though, because I really felt like I was involved in the process. As you said, sometimes with if you're working with a traditional publisher, the author and illustrator will barely will barely talk about anything, especially if it's like, it's the cover. So the publisher themselves will have a big input into the direction of it, and so their opinion obviously maybe trumps the author's opinion. I know that from a few of my traditionally published friends, they've not necessarily had much input. So for me anyway, I was delighted that I got to dialogue with you so much in that regard. Have you had jobs where you haven't had that though, where you've just had a sort of brief and you've just had to go from that?
What, without the back and forth?
Yeah.
I think I guess you sort of like, with each job is different, and you sort of work out how involved people want to be, and like you just be receptive to that. Like a lot of people, well, because obviously you can get people that want to completely like know exactly what they want, and are not open to, like, you're bringing in your own ideas, and so that can be a little bit difficult, because as a creative, you want to be involved, because you can bring a lot more to the table than just physically the hand that's going to like draw it. And then also I've had clients that like, I mean, I don't know, it's hard, it's just, they've just sort of been like, yep, sure, that's it. And you're like, is it because I just nailed it, or is it because you just want something and you just want it gone? I don't know. So it's difficult.
Yeah, and you just wonder a bit with the traditional publishing machine, because they are dealing with so many books at one time.
Yeah.
If the conversation that you could have, it loses something, maybe. There's maybe something lost there, and and you've obviously done your best work as an illustrator, and they've given you a brief, but I think the dialogue brings out even more than what you would do just if you were left to your own devices, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. It's different with different projects. Like there's some that I'm working with an art director, and I'm like, oh, this is great, because I like, like the same way working with you was great, because when you're sat in your, like, in your spare room all day on your own, like it's so lonely, and just like whoever it is, to be working with someone in a collaboration is just like, I love it so much, and it's great so when I'm working with publishers and there's an art director and everyone just wants it to be the best it can be, and everyone's bringing in their own ideas and their own expertise, then I think that's really great, and I really like that. And so as long as if you're working with other people, as long as it's not someone that's just bringing up more barriers and obstacles, then it's a good process. It's when things start to get, because you hope that there's well, it can't always be linear, but in terms of the job, you want to agree, like the rough sketch, and everyone to agree on that, and then to go through like the color and any of all these sort of checkpoints that you've got. You kind of want those to go in order, and without having to like suddenly go back and like redoing everything again, because that's when like your things start, the cogs start falling apart, and and there's this big machine that you're part of is just, you realize it's not working so well. But so I think, whoever you're working with, as long as you're all collaborating and like respecting the different like roles that everybody has, then it can be a good experience.
Yeah, and I definitely felt like that throughout the whole time we were going back and forth. So just if anyone is wondering what the actual illustrations look like, throughout the process, definitely check out Jen's her newsletter and her previous newsletter. I think was it in September you sent that one?
Yeah. It was back in September.
So if they sign up for your newsletter, will they be able to see the previous editions as well?
Yeah, if you go, I'm on Substack, so all of the they're all of my previous, if you click the link in my bio on Instagram or on Twitter, it goes to my link tree, and you can see the link to my Substack, and it's got all my newsletters there. So I talk about that one, and then just a little bit about the process of a few other things, and like art challenges I've been talking about as well at the moment. If any illustrators, or even like I had like authors that, because art challenges, like, I've had people that it's not just for people that want a career in illustration, it's for anyone that's, art is such a nice hobby to have, so it's for anyone that wants to just kind of have a go at doing drawing things.
Yeah, and it's well worth obviously go and check out our newsletter, because not only do we talk about this process, as she says, as Jen says, there's so much more there as well. And the illustration world just seems so nice and friendly. I don't know if it's always like that, but that's the impression I get from having a look at your feed and so on. Everyone's very, whenever you post something on Instagram, the amount of comments you get on it, and they're all lovely as well. Is really nice to see.
Yeah, it's that's like, I think you need that. Everyone just like clings to each other, because it's like, yeah, everyone's so nice, and we're all like, everyone's just trying to do everyone's just trying to make it in the world, and being able to help people, and like knowing that, yeah, people that like have helped me and like just giving me a shout out and stuff. It's so nice to be able to help other people as well. So we're all kind of just like, yeah, trying to figure out how to how to get through.
Yeah, and the other thing I was wanting to mention as well is obviously doing an illustrated cover. It doesn't just involve the actual illustration. There's a lot more to it. Things like working out bleeds and trim sizes, and putting the text on, for the title, the author's name, the back cover information. There's so much more to the illustrator's job than just the actual the creative drawing part of it as well. Is that something that you had to learn on your own, or is it something that you learned as part of your course that you did?
Well, for me, I enjoy that bit, because I've got my background is in design, and so these are things that I'm kind of familiar with. Like, for me as a designer, I'd be working with other people's illustrations, and then setting the type, and setting the bleed and things, and I would always be like, oh, why can't I be the one that like does the illustrations too? And so now that I'm an illustrator, and now I've even got jobs where like a lot of the covers that I've done, because I've like, when I've done the rough sketch, the illustration, I've kind of like, I've designed it at the same time, because for me, I do both. It's hard for me to see where the line is, and I'm obviously accidentally stepping on people's toes in some occasions when I'm working with a team. But then a lot of the time they've liked what I've decided, and so I've designed it all, and then they've sent it to the designer, who's like had feedback and things like that, which is great, because I want to like learn. I don't have a other than like the covers that you've seen. I never had like a job at working in publishing as a designer, but I just obviously enjoy designing. And so for me, that was, yeah, I enjoyed doing that. But at the same time, when I do just do the illustration and send it off and someone else designs it, it's kind of like, that's quite good as well, because I'm like,
yeah,
like it means like I am officially an illustrator. I've like crossed over. But yeah, for working on this project, like it was really nice to be able to sort of do the whole lot, because like all the elements do have to work together. And for me, like, and obviously when you're an illustrator, you're always thinking like, okay, text space, where's this going to go? But I could physically design the I had a vision in my head of what I wanted to do with the type, and so making that work with the illustration and everything, it was nice to just do all of that all kind of in parallel.
Yeah, and obviously, everyone who's seen it would agree it's absolutely stunning. We had the cover reveal, didn't we? And oh, I can't remember the date now. It was in September though.
Yeah.
And it was so well received both on
Yeah.
Instagram and Twitter. I mean, I think I literally spent the entire day just replying to people and saying, thank you, and we're both so pleased with it, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
How was that for you? Is it a nice feeling when it gets revealed?
Yeah, it was so nice. Yeah, because I've never really had not really had that cover reveal, especially like had my my Twitter sort of like buzzing all day. That was really nice. And I said to you tonight that I was on a narrow boat with my with my brother had come over from the States. I was on this narrow boat with my phone like buzzing. It was it was bizarre, but it was really nice. Yeah, it was so great to see to see so many people coming out to say what that they like the book, and I see it feels like everyone's really really excited to get hold of it.
Yeah, and for me that was one of the most important things. A lot of people who follow this podcast are people who maybe are considering self-publishing themselves at some point, and for me anyway, I think getting the quality of the cover as high as it can be is probably the most important thing you can do when you're self-publishing. And I say that, knowing the old adage that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but
Yeah, everyone knows
absolutely
we
everyone
do.
does. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if your cover, like, and I have seen, and you'll people will have recognized this too. I have seen covers that have been self-published where like the person's tried to do the cover on Canva, or they've like clip art or something, something similar to that. And
Yeah.
you can really see the difference. Whereas I genuinely feel with mine, not only does it stack up alongside the traditionally published books, I actually think that in some ways it stands out even more from them. And and that's my hope, is that when it's finally published, and maybe it does get on a few bookshelves or whatever, that it will sit there not just proudly and fitting in with the other ones, but it will actually stand out. And that was so important to me, and you really delivered on that for me.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah, that's really good to hear, because I guess that, yeah, as for you as the with someone that's got a clear vision and that's what you want, like, I guess that if you have to sacrifice quite a lot of that if you choose to go down a traditional publishing route, don't you? You'd have to kind of let go of that now, whereas you were able to hold on to that. And it's like, yeah, I'm glad that we were able to create something together that like sort of meets those expectations. So that's really good, because it's because often you can get a good because you can often get a good illustrator, and but then they might not be willing or confident or able to, because for me, like what I did with your type, I was only able to do that because I had, like, even if someone like is good with typography, you need to have the software to do that. Like, and it's that, like Adobe software is really expensive, so someone who's not a designer might not have it, so they might not, Canva might be all that's available, and then like just by the fact that you physically can't, like whatever you're imagining in your head is just so hard to translate it when you haven't got the right tools to do it. So there are a lot of barriers. But then if you are an author and you've got an illustrator that's not confident, you can then hire another person to finish the design. There's like freelance book designers that will, if you're worried about that the type is going to let down, like you've got a really lovely illustrator and you don't want the type to let it down, then you can definitely go to somebody else who's confident doing the formatting and creating a nice like title for you and stuff.
Yeah, no, honestly, like I've so enjoyed working with you, and I've actually asked you to do a couple of extra bits of illustration as well, which is exciting. And I'll show people when it's ready, and when we're both happy. Yeah, when we're both happy with it. There's no rush on that because the book's not out for another 3 months. But so excited about that, because we've you did 2 of the team, but there's actually in the book there's 4 that make up the team. So we've got the other 2 been drawn at the moment. So excited to share them at some point as well. So just to finish off then, for you personally, Jen, what are your hopes and aspirations as an illustrator? What are you hoping that over the next sort of 5 to 10 years your work starts to look like? Would you like to do more middle grade covers? Would you like to do more in the sort of chapter book, picture book end? Would you like to do middle grades with illustrations inside the book? Or is there something else that you're interested in?
Yeah, I feel like middle grade is definitely the area, like that, because I'm constantly, my feedback that I always get is like, your characters are appeal to older kids, like than which is like funny because I've got like a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, but that I just seem to naturally draw like my characters just look older, and like the actual characters look like they're older, and also they're characters that will appear to older age group. And like for my like couple of years that I've been doing this, I kind of have sort of learned that you just need to like lean into these things and not try and fight against what you naturally do, because that's when like you can, I think that you can tell, and often other people can tell, that what you're doing isn't like authentic. And so as soon as you start just trying out, because there's always this idea that you have to just, I'm an artiste and I have to just do what I want to do, and that often like you might end up just doing like you think you want to do, and as soon as you start like just taking in what people say and making little tweaks and realizing, like, because as soon as I started doing that, and I was obviously lucky that I had an agent from very early on who was kind of giving me like this from the market, like how to make my work marketable. They were telling me little things. So in one way that was obviously like gold dust, really amazing to have these professionals that were giving me this advice and steering me in a direction that they thought that my work could be sellable. But then also at the same time, I was learning and growing and under like a sort of with this pressure to create sellable work. So it was kind of like a double-edged sword in that sense. But like, you know, I just sort of kept going and kept wanting to get better and create better work. And through that, it's made me realize how much I love doing characters for middle grade. And luckily now, it's paying off because I'm working. That seems to be like what I'm mainly working on, and also picture books that are for older kids as well, and like non-fiction things. And especially like nowadays, there's so like non-fiction books are like really, there's so many, like there's so many opportunities in non-fiction, isn't there, for like really nice ones, like things that you know, like learning like and things about emotions and like how you're feeling, and then also helping kids just, you know, like learning like life skills and that sort of stuff. People are like, there's a real push for that sort of book, which is aimed a little bit, the ones that I'm doing are aimed a little bit older, so that's nice. And also, but yeah, because I realized that I wanted to get into middle grade work, and I was kind of steering my portfolio towards into this direction. My agents were kind of encouraging me to try. They're like, well, you know, write your own story. And so that's why I've been like using Write Mentor to help me with that. And so I'm attempting to do a bit of writing myself with the sort of ethos of like, you know, if I want work, I can create my own work I can create my own stories to illustrate. And so that's the sort of, at the moment, that's where I've kind of reached it. That's what I'm reaching for, just getting more covers like the one that I've done with you, because that was brilliant. And and any sort of middle grade books that have like like black and white illustrations inside, that kind of thing, that's the area that I'm focusing on at the moment, which because I think I found also that it's like quite good to have a little bit of a focus, because there's otherwise you're kind of sort of flailing about everywhere. So having that sort of focus is like starting to pay off for me now, so which is good, because it's also a little bit risky to focus in onto one area. So I'm glad that it's paying off.
Yeah, well, you definitely got the talent, and I'll definitely be recommending you to anyone who asks me for a suggestion for an illustrator. And can people just contact you through your agency, Plum Agency?
Yeah. You can contact them through the agency. They got a nice new shiny website, and it's very easy to find the email address to my direct agent, who was called Maddie. So if you go onto Plum, if you go onto my portfolio on the Plum website, or if you go onto my website, I've got a link to contact them, or to contact me, so whichever you prefer.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I hope you get a lot more work in the middle grade area, because it certainly deserves to, based upon what I've seen so far. And you've been a real pleasure to work with throughout this entire project. And hopefully, if I write any more middle grade books, then you'll work with me on those. Yeah. Perfect. So thanks so much for joining me, Jen. And that's the end of episode 7 of the 1100 project. And I'll see you all next time. Thanks so much for listening to the show. I really appreciate every one of you who makes it all the way through one of my monologued episodes and gets to the very end. So if you've got this far, well done, and just know that I appreciate that you are sticking with it all the way through. If you want to find out more about me or about my book, you can go to stuartwhiteauthor.co.uk, or you can catch me up on social media. All of my handles are Stuart White WM. So if you go to Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, you'll find me there as Stuart White WM. I'll see you all over there. And don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel so that you can catch all the future episodes, or to subscribe on your podcast provider to make sure that you get all of the new episodes straight to your device. You can also sign up to my newsletter, which is in the text below, and that will enable you to get the first look and insights into the journey. Thanks again for listening.